Let me talk here about deep copy assignment operator. This is related to deep copy constructor, but the difference is that the deep copy assignment operator gets used when we attempt to copy one object to another. Suppose we have two objects and we want to copy data from one object to another object. In this case, the compiler will make sure that deep copy assignment operator will be actually invoked instead of copy constructor. If you are interested in deep copy constructor or the concept of deep copy assignment, refer to my previous videos. This video is focused on coding, so let me jump to the editor. The editor shows definition of student class with attribute student number and pointer pointing to a dynamic memory space where the name of the student would have been stored. It also shows a default constructor, it shows a custom constructor, and it shows the copy constructor, and a print function and the destructor. So in the previous video, if you watch carefully, I explained a copy constructor is called in this situation. This is a, if you have a syntax like this, copy constructor is called, or it is also called when you actually pass this object into another function as a value. For example, if I have a print function to print object st, if you have you don't have reference variable, reference parameter or pointer parameter, then it will be passed by value. In that case, the copy constructor will be invoked when you call this function. If I call print function here, and then if you actually happen to call that print function by passing s1 as object, in this case also s1 will be copied to s2 st, and then that st object is going to be a local object to this function, and that will be actually used to display, to invoke print function. Now the topic to discuss today is copy assignment operator. Right, copy assignment operator is actually used when you have an existing object such as s0 or s3 or s1, whatever object. If you want to copy one object to another, right? If for example s0 object has the data, let's say 5G04004 and Alexander. Okay, so if you have this data, then s0 object will already have a dynamic memory space to store Alexander. It would have a static memory space to store this ID serial number, and dynamic memory space to store the name. So if you want to copy S3 object data to S1, then there are some things you need to be careful. In the case of student number, it can be just copied in the static memory. That is just overwriting, so there's no issue with that. But when you are copying this, then you will have, the object is going to have an address of the dynamic memory space, so you can copy address to address that is not desirable. So you need to do some cleaning. First you need to delete the dynamic memory space that is holding this data, and then after that you want to allocate memory, and that would be sufficient to store the S3 content, which is going to S1 content, so to store Harry, and then you copy data into it. So whenever compiler says this syntax, it will try to say copy assignment operator. So let us go and define that operator so that this assignment operation becomes valid, right? So here in this space I'm going to be explaining how to use it. This is not a constructor, so it's going to have a return type, but at this point I'm going to let me use void as return type, but I will come back to this and change it later. And void, then you are essentially overloading an assignment operator. So the syntax for overloading is you write the keyword operator, and then you write the symbol, operator symbol that you want to overload. Now this is a function, and in this function you are going to have a parameter. The parameter you pass is going to be the type of the thing that you place in this place, which is a student type object, right? So the type is going to be student, and like in the case of copy constructor, you want to pass an object as a reference, give a name, and you don't want this function to make any changes to the received object, so make it constant. So this is the syntax for the first line of the function. I will come to this void in a moment. So now if you have if the function returns something, then you have to have return statement, right? In this case void, just I'm having just simple return statement without anything to return there. Now basic fundamentally you actually want to copy, perform the copy operation like this. You want to do this operation. You want to copy the name from number from the received object to the current object. You want to copy the name from the received object to current object. You want to copy, you want to allocate memory, and you want to copy. But before doing this, you actually need to deallocate the memory. So you have to have delete thing operation, like I told you. First you need to release the dynamic memory that was used to store this data, and then after that you can allocate a memory. Otherwise there will be a memory leak problem. You delete, and then you allocate for the new, and then you copy. These are the basic things, but you need to be also careful about some other things here. Once it is deleted, and then you also need to do validation, something like this before copying, right? So I also want to do something like this thing. I want to do validation here. And if the condition, the data is not valid, then you want to set into default state, because once a copy operation is actually invoked, then you actually, it's not wise to set the object into the previous state, the state it was in before. So you want to set into a default state. So you actually put this statement here, and now this is called delete the memory step. This is validation step, this is shallow copying state, this is deep copying state, and then set to the default state. Now before that, you also want to make sure that you don't prevent copying from an object to itself, right? For example, if for example I have a statement something like this here, s3 equals to s3, or I have a statement something like this, if I have a reference variable referring to s3, and then somewhere down the line I happen to do something like this, say equals to s, right? This is also, I mean, attempt to copy an object from itself. So we don't want to execute the logic if you are copying from the itself. We want to prevent that operation. So you want to actually have a statement that will actually make sure that it checks whether it is being copied to the same object. If it is not being copied to the same object, then execute this statements. Otherwise you just don't do anything, right? So if you want to see the address of the current object to the address, whether the address of current object and address of this incoming object, received object, match or not, right? So way of checking address of current object is through this pointer, and this not equals to address of st. If this condition is satisfied, then you actually do that operation, otherwise you do not make any changes. So this is these are the components of copy assignment operator. So you receive the student type object as a reference and constant, and you actually make sure that it is checked so that it is not copied to yourself, and then you delete the memory, release the memory of the current object, and you validate the data coming from the received object, and you perform shallow copying and you perform deep copying, and then if data is not valid, you do set the object to the default state. So with this I think this statement should work. Let me comment these things out here. So this statement, this line should work. So after this we should be able to display s0 dot print. So we can see it should be it should contain, before that you can try to print s0 as it will have a data this 4000 for Alexander, and after that it should have new data, I mean the data of this object s1, which is actually copied to s3, and from s3 we assign to s0. So let me switch to editor terminal and do the compilation and linking, and followed by the execution. So now we can see this, all these things displayed. I think to make it a little bit more visible or pleasant to see, let me put new line character here, here. Right, so let me switch back, compile and link and execute. Now we can see this was the s3 object, I think it was s0 object content. So this was the s0 object content, and this was the s3 object content, and after assignment s3 object got the data. Switching back to the editor. So so again here if you miss this, it will lead to memory leak problem, and if you don't allocate, you cannot copy in the memory that is not appropriately allocated. So all the steps are important here. And at the end I want to point out one thing. What if for example, for both this copy constructor and copy assignment operator, if for example instead of a character pointer I have something else, float pointer to hold the marks. If I have a float pointer to hold the marks of the student, and if you have this kind of array, then you also need to have another variable to keep track of how many elements are in this array. So I want to have as number marks, so number of marks. In that case you will be making some changes here. In the default constructor, s marks is going to be null ptr, and number of marks is going to be 0 in the custom constructor. Now in the custom constructor you will have some extra logic to receive the marks and int number, and you also need to do some validation. For example, if marks not equals to null ptr and number is greater than 0, I would do copying s marks equals to new. In this case I'm going to allocate floating point type the dynamic memory space for floating point elements, and the length is going to number, because this is not a string, this is not a character array. So you want to deal one by one, element by element. And then you have a loop, you want to iterate. Before that, you also want to copy the number as number max equals to num, and then I plus plus, and you copy one by one equals to s. So this is the copying, and if the data is not valid, then you actually set to default state, which is I mean kind of what we did in the this constructor here, these two lines. Right, this is the amount of change you want to make. So see the difference, right? If you have character array, you have to do like this. If you have a non-character array, then you need to iterate one by one, element by element, copy one by one. Now in the copy constructor, you also need to do the same thing. For example, I would I would just copy this thing, entire thing, and put it there, this marks for marks part. So if source object marks and source object is valid, then source object number marks and it's going to be source object s marks. So you copy like this, and otherwise is set to the default values, right? So it could be something like this. And in the case of copy assignment, you would be doing similar thing, just you can, but one thing was, let me just copy this thing, this entire thing, and put it here, right? But one thing you need to careful about is that you also need to release the memory for this marks, because this is also pointer, it has it points to dynamic memory space, so you need to release that memory as well, right? So I think this should be okay. So if you have multiple pointers, then you need to have the logic differently. Sometimes you may be required to do validation, all this two validation at the same time. In that case, you can put everything together. That means copy assign only if all the data, the student number, name, marks, number of marks is valid. In that case, you can put all this logic inside here, and put all this statements combine and put in one single if statement. Otherwise, for example, it makes sense, you copy number and name, and then marks. If I mean, you can separate the marks. If there is no marks, then you just set the marks to default state, but you can copy number if name. That's okay, right? So these are the things, and you also may need to make changes to print function to display the marks as well. So now, because I actually had the constructor modified, that's the reason why it is showing the problem. So to remove that problem, I could set this to null ptr, and this to default values equals to 0. So if I have default values, then I can get over this errors here. So that's the situation there. Let me compile, because it will not print marks. So I leave up to you to change this logic to display the marks as well, but it will only display the number. So I hope this works. Let me test it. compilation and linking and execution. It is working. There's no issue with this now. One last thing I want to do this here is, if I want to assign like this, is fine, right? But if I want to do assigning um, in a chain form, or if I want to change the assignment, let's say S3 equals to S2 equals to S0, like this. In this case, this assignment, this function is not sufficient, because the result of this, because the assignment will start from right to left, it will go from right to left. That means S0 will be assigned to S2 first, and then the result of this assignment will be assigned to S3. That means S2 to S0 to S2, S2 to S3. So first this line is executed, this portion of the code is executed, the function is called, and this portion of the code, when it is executed, the function is called, it will return void, because our function here, it returns void. But if we want this chain assignment to be valid, we don't want this to return void, we want this to return actually object S2, so that in that case it will be S3 equals to X2 executed. So we want to actually this function to return, instead of just returning nothing, I want to return the current object, right? So you return the current object using this syntax, and the return type should also be modified. It should be student reference. When you return, you always return by reference, because you don't want to return by copy, right? So if you want this statement, to return something, you return S2, then you want to have access to the same object that was actually modified because of this operation. So I think this is it. Let me compile and see whether it is okay or not. Compile and link. I think there is a problem. Yeah. The problem here was S3 was not, S2 is not defined in the scope. So this, we don't have this S2 object. So maybe we can create one S2 object outside here. So now it is gone, so it should compile now. It is compiled, and execution is execution, okay, right? So there is no issue here. Now getting back to the code. So this is not very complicated. The concept is, I mean, if you remember a few things, for example, the syntax of this first line, and then this syntax for preventing copying from the objects to itself, deleting memory, and validation, shallow copying, decopying, if you remember, and return the current object, then it should be okay. This is all I have to talk about this topic. Thank you for watching.